just witnessed the murder of my friend on his Snapchat story. I knew something was wrong the second I saw 5 missed calls from my friend Richie. I just never guessed how bad it actually was. That was, until I checked my Snapchat notification. It was a new story from Richie. He's my best friend and doesn't post often, so it must have been something serious. Maybe a relative died or something? I only realized how much worse it really was when I checked the story post. I opened Snapchat to see a story preview which was almost pitch black, except for one area that looked as if it were being lit by a flashlight. I clicked his name and the video opened. If only I had picked up his calls, maybe I could have saved him. My suspicions were confirmed when a nearly dark screen played, followed by the click of a flashlight illuminating the hallway. I recognized the room as Richie's bedroom. Whoever was taking the video was humming softly. The flashlight was focused on the closer. It became brighter and brighter as the light moved closer, pausing for a second as the man finished humming before throwing open the door. My stomach dropped as I stared at the small screen, which displayed a battered and sobbing Richie huddled in the corner of the closet. "Please just leave me alone, He stuttered, but was cut off as a gloved hand came into view, the light shining brightly off the polished leather. The hand was holding a gun. "No, please!" Bang! Richie's head rocked backwards as his brains exploded onto the back wall, eyes rolling into the back of his head and blood pouring out of his nose like a crimson waterfall. I screamed and jumped so violently that my phone fell out of my hands, clattering face down onto the floor. I gasped for air and clung to the shelf for support, gurgling and coughing playing from the speakers of my phone, before a second gunshot rang out and the first video ended. The air seemed to stand still as the only sounds in the store were the hums of the refrigerator and my heavy breathing. I could feel the color drain from my face, my fingers turning ice cold. I collapsed to the floor. I heard a woman gasp and begin dialing someone. It had to be some sort of sick joke, right? I glanced over at my phone, willing myself to pick it up. The screen timer had expired, and I was faced with a black mirror, staring at the stranger in the reflection. Snapchat immediately opened back up, proudly displaying another entry to Richie's final story, posted 30 seconds ago. This one was a picture, a close-up of Richie's face. All the life had drained out of his eyes, and the wall and carpet surrounding his head was nothing but red. Positioned just above the bullet hole was a text box. "First person to view this story is next." The phone slid out of my hand and rested on my leg. I could see the flashing red and blue in the reflective glass of the fridge. The woman pointed over to where I was, and 2 uniformed men walked over. "Sir, what's wrong?" one of them asked, kneeling beside me. I tried to speak, but my mouth was too dry. I slowly turned to face him, staring deep into his eyes, before muttering, "2243 Glen Cove Drive," and pointing at Richie's story. The cops glanced at each other as one stood and took my phone. He watched the story before calling it in on his radio. The rest of the night is a blur. I remember my girlfriend Jessica arrived at the station a few minutes after I got there. She was crying and holding on to me, but I just wasn't present. The cops held onto my phone for evidence, recording the story into their own files before returning it to me. We got into the car and drove home. In complete silence aside from Jessica's sniffling, we pulled into the driveway and I shut off the car and sat back in the seat. "I think I'd like to be alone," I whispered. She seemed taken aback. "John, I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, I'll be in a few minutes," I said. I know how it must have looked, but it wasn't like that. I just needed to clear my head before I said or did something I'd regret. After a few failed attempts of changing my mind, Jessica got out of the car. She closed the door and made her way up to the front door, glancing back a few times before stepping inside. As soon as the front door closed, I burst into tears, holding my face in my hands and digging my fingernails into my skin. I could only think of the 2 missed calls. Was he calling for help? I was on his speed dial, so he may not have had time to dial 911. I was his only lifeline and I let him down. I could have saved him. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket, and I raised my face from my hands, breathing heavily and glancing down at it. I pulled it out of my pocket and glanced at the screen, feeling that familiar feeling of dread and anguish as it notified me that I received a new snap from Richie. My hand began to shake once again as I unlocked it and opened Snapchat. The message was a video of my house, of Jessica talking to me and walking up the stairs, of me sobbing in the driver's seat as it slowly zoomed in until my face took up the entire screen, 5 words written out in the text box. "Jonathan Newport, lucky number 7. I jumped up the stairs to my house and burst through the door, looking around frantically. "Jess, where are you?" I yelled, glancing in various rooms. "We need to call the cops. I ran into the kitchen where Jessica was sitting at the table, phone laying on the surface with Snapchat open. She looked at me, face as white as a sheet. "John, what's going on? I'm getting these messages from Richie." I grabbed her phone and looked through the instant messages. There was a picture of Jessica taken from the back window, accompanied with a text box saying, "Call the police and I will kill you too." My heart feeling like it was going to burst out of my chest. Okay, we need to go. If we hurry, we can make